In today's show, the season opener was a clunker. Let's talk about what went wrong and where they go from here. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts, and also on YouTube. Coming at you Monday through Friday, each and every weekday. So make it your first listen, make it a part of your daily routine, and tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's episode, it didn't start out great. The Blazers begin their 2023-2024 campaign with a stinker. They lose 123-111 to the Clippers. It wasn't even remotely that close. It was a beat down, a good old-fashioned molly-whopping. We'll do our fastest recap of the West, talk about that game. We'll talk about Scoot Henderson's debut, Deandre Ayton's first game as a Trailblazer, and Anfernee Simons was good. We'll find some positives, talk about where the Blazers go from here to close the show. But let's do what we do. Our first one of the season, 82 to go. Fastest recap in the West. Blazers lose 123-111. They were down 29-20 after one. They had 8 field goals in that first quarter and 7 turnovers. It was ugly. The Clippers hadn't made threes, so the Blazers were vaguely hanging around, and the Clippers started to make shots, and the ball game was over like that. 67-47 at the break. Anfernee Simons 14, Jeremy Grant 11. With about 5 minutes left, just over 5 minutes left in the second quarter, Deandre Ayton picked up his 4th foul. He was just a non-factor in this game, in part because of foul trouble, in part because the Blazers didn't know what to do with him on offense. Down 20 at the break, it got worse from there. It trailed by as many as 30 points in the third quarter, 99-76 after 3. Only 27 after 3. Deandre Ayton had two field goal attempts through 3 quarters. Scoot's first basket didn't come until the second half. That's Scoot Henderson. All of the new guys you wanted to see, many of the sort of new parts you wanted to see, it just didn't work out for them. Fourth quarter was extended garbage time, although the Clippers did bring back their starters to make sure that it didn't get too messy. They win 123-111. Let's hit the box score because it's a real game. Anfernee Simons led the way with 18 points. He added 4 assists. Jeremy Grant had 13, just 2 in the second half. Malcolm Brogdon actually had 20, a team-high 20, but 13 of his points came in the fourth quarter once the game was over. A garbage time merchant for you fantasy players. Way to go, Malcolm. 20 points, 5 dimes for Malcolm Brogdon. 14 for Shaedon Sharpe, 10 and 7 rebounds for Robert Williams. In his NBA debut, Scoot Henderson salvaged it with a fourth quarter against the deep bench of the Clippers. 11 points to go along with 4 assists. He was 5 of 11 from the floor, 0 of 3 from 3, and made his only free throw attempt. On the Clippers side, Kawhi Leonard 23 and 5, Paul George 27 and 6, 20 and 12 for Ivica Zubac, 11 and 13 assists for Russell Westbrook. Busy Bones Highland 17 off the bench. In former Blazers news, Rocco got the start and had 5. Norman Powell had 8 off the bench, and Mace in your face 6 points, 8 boards off the bench. Nicholas Batum scoreless in his 9 minutes. That's your fastest recap in the West. So much went wrong early in this game. I want to make you a promise here. If you're listening to game 1, I'm going to do all of these. I'm going to do all 82. Maybe I'll miss one. I'll have a sprained ankle or something. I'll miss one. But I'm going to do a podcast after, 80 games. I don't think there's any reason to freak out after this one. Brand new team, starting a 19-year-old at the hardest position to play in the sport, point guard. this wasn't the game to be like, oh no, Chauncey Billups can't coach. Joe Cronin's a freaking idiot. Like, this team stinks. Move him to Seattle. Like, that's not what this was. This was a team who's probably not going to be very good this year, playing poorly in their home opener. But to dismiss this as just, a game, and learning curve would also be silly. I think we can draw conclusions from this game that are meaningful without freaking out to either side of the pendulum, without fully rose-colored glasses and say, you know what, Malcolm Brogdon will figure it out, or without fully freaking out. Why I mentioned all 82 is because, I think the Blazers are going to lose 55 games. Now is not the time to there's going to be a lot of these. They're going to lose. They might lose a lot like this. Clippers look good. This was a game where the Blazers just were not competitive, did not have a competitive moment in this game. Clunky offense right at the beginning. We're kind of vaguely in it because the Clippers weren't scoring either. But as soon as the Clippers started to find their footing offensively, that was your ball game. And Clippers made a bunch of threes, 16 of 34. That's 47%. Shot, we're shooting north of 50% the entire game. Once they got rolling, and after the first 5 minutes they kept on rolling. I think the big thing here is Scoot Henderson's debut. A scoreless first half where he struggled, just kind of looked like someone playing at a level that is new to him and didn't know exactly where he was going to fit. But to me, Scoot struggles are like the 5th or 6th most telling thing about this. They're low on the list. I want to talk about Scoot in the second segment, but I like more so than Scoot, and we'll get there. We will get there because I was excited to watch him, and he didn't play very well. I'm much more concerned about the Blazers' lack of cohesion on defense and their lack of plan to get DeAndre Ayton involved in the offensive game in any meaningful way than I am that Scoot Henderson looked like a teenager playing basketball. I'm more concerned that the offense looked the way it looked than the fact that the guy running it is a teenager. The best they looked on offense is when they let Anfernee Simons have the ball and let him go cook. If the plan's got to be better than that. It's got to be better than Ant go cook. You have to get yourself into better situations. I thought Jeremy Grant looked like he was coasting, just like just out there chilling, just having a good time. I do not think he played with the intensity. Defense, whatever. You'd like to see him play harder on defense, but the intensity just to get good shots on offense. Fuck is floating. Blazers need someone to set the tone. They need a tone setter. And when Scoot Henderson struggled, they didn't really seem to have someone to set that tone. That worries me. The defense worries me. The lack of tone setter worries me. The lack of plan to get DeAndre Ayton involved worries me. Scoot? But let's talk about Scoot. Let's talk about him in the second segment because his growth is what this whole season is about. Game 1 wasn't a good one. What can they do to help him a little bit more? Let's talk about that in the second segment. First, I want to tell you about Ibotta. Look, Ibotta is going to hook you up for Thanksgiving. This year, Ibotta is here to give you cash and help make sure your Thanksgiving table is complete. Because who wants turkey without the gravy? Starting November 1st, for the 4th year in a row, Ibotta is giving 100% cash back on your Thanksgiving feast. Just add the offers in the app to redeem for everything you need to make for Thanksgiving, for your Thanksgiving feast. All you have to do is shop at your favorite retailers and then upload the receipts. Ibotta gives you cash back on grocery items and a whole bunch of other stuff that isn't just grocery items. But right now, 'tis the season to go ahead and get that cash back. Where other apps are going to give you points that don't really amount to much, Ibotta gives you real money that you can send to your bank account, you can send to your PayPal account, or you can get as a gift card. And then once you earn that cash back, you can go spend it on stuff you want. Plus, it's not just Thanksgiving. It's things like Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and a whole bunch more. So download the Ibotta app today. Use the code LOCKED to get 100% cash back on your Thanksgiving dinner starting November 1st. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app and use the code LOCKED. That's IBOTTA, Ibotta, in the Google Play or App Store, and use the code LOCKED. Today's show is also brought to you by Prize Picks. It's daily fantasy made easy. Prize Picks is super simple. You can play it on the website on prizepicks.com, or you can play it on your phone if that's what you're into. I use the app personally, and I play basketball. And here's how it works. I play the NBA. You pick between 2 and 6 players, and it's just you going over or under the statistical line set by Prize Picks. So for basketball, for me, I'm seeing things like points, rebounds, assists, blocks, and steals, but you can mix and match. You can play football on the weekends, then basketball during the week. If you got Sunday basketball games, which you will this week, you can play both NFL and NBA in the same day on the same entry, and when you win, safe and fast withdrawals. Plus, you can make your ballot in like 30 seconds. So, maybe a minute if you really want to think through it. Quick to play, quick to win. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA for your first deposit match up to $100. That's LOCKEDONNBA, and that's prizepicks.com/LOCKEDONNBA, and use that promo code LOCKEDONNBA. Prize Picks, daily fantasy made easy. All right. So, I mentioned the other things that worry me more than Scoot Henderson. I legitimately was baffled by the use of Deandre Ayton. He took 2 shots in the first 3 quarters. Some of that was that he was in wild foul trouble the whole time. Never got a rhythm. Some of that was that they got to get a plan for him like, the way that they guarded Scoot on pick and rolls is like he's a non-shooter. They're clogging the paint. It's really hard to roll hard to the rim when the defender's going under and the big man's drop back. They're both so low down. So running mid pick and rolls when neither player is a shooter, that's hard. That's hard to pull off. That's challenging. So getting, either running, straight full cleared outside pick and roll, so it's harder just to sag into the middle of the paint, or running dribble handoffs to get Ayton touches, or just throwing him post ups, taking advantage of if teams switch. They didn't switch 1 through 5. Zubac stayed home, and they just had no plan for DA. That worries me. Blazers transition defense worries me. They just didn't match up at all in transition defense. They came out in the first possession of the game. They literally off the tip off. Matisse Thybulle gets it and throws the ball out of bounds, trying to just quickly get it over to Scoot Henderson. It was just a harbinger of things to come. It's like, whoa, this could be a mess. Transition defense, though, they played zone on that first defensive possession, gave up a good look. Transition defense, it was yucky. Like they just could not find each other. Chauncey played a little bit of the Rob Williams and Deandre Ayton pairing together, and that was particularly bad because even not in like full transition when you're sprinting back, but half transition, they push, you have to get back, and then you match up from there. Rob Williams, like, if you're playing 2 bigs, it's not like Rob can guard everyone on the court, right? He needs to find a player he can guard. So there's a possession where he's supposed to be guarding, he was on there to guard Russell Westbrook, right? They're saying, okay, he's a non-shooter. You can sag off him. It's a nice little like defensive wrinkle. I like the idea, right? But functionally, it doesn't always work that you get to guard Russell Westbrook every single time, particularly if you cannot score. You're going to be running back off defensive rebounds, and the Blazers could not score in this game, so they're running back off defensive rebounds. Rob has to pick up Bones Highland in transition. He realizes he isn't supposed to be guarding. Like, that's not a good matchup for him. So he tries to take the guy in the corner and become the low man and tries to get Brogdon out there. But the communication is super slow. Highland gets a wide open 3. End of the half, they bring Shaedon Sharpe and Anfernee Simons into a pick and roll. They don't communicate. Bones Highland steps back, takes a practice level wide open 3 off a mid pick and roll. Just bad communication. Transition defense, just getting back and matching up was bad. Bad defensive communication. That could be there all year. But those little things you can clean up. Getting blown by, not being physically strong enough, like lateral quickness and strength, that just might be part of how it works. Having just not communicating simple, okay, we're going to switch we're just going to switch as soon as they come set a screen, or I'm not going to switch and I'm going to chase them over the top, help me out. Like there's every team has a word for it. Blue, 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 black, 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 whatever it is. Red, 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 gold, gold, gold. Like just they got to switch even. You don't need to use the color. Switch, 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 or stay home. Like you can make it simple. Those things are way more troubling to me than Scoot. But Scoot's part of it. Like Scoot's struggles are undeniable. He got it going in he finished with 11 points, 11.3 boards and 4 assists. Like in the grand scheme of the box score, when you're like looking back in the annals, you'd be like, he was fine. But started 0 for 5. He had 3 turnovers and no assists in the first half. Like he looked like it through 3 quarters when the game was like sort of vaguely competitive. Scoot had 2 through 3 quarters on 1 of 6 shooting, and then he had 9 in the fourth quarter when the Clippers were playing their deep bench. He looked better. He looked better against lower level competition. But the point is that he has to continue to play up. Well, I'm not worried about him like in a big picture kind of way. I will say he looked like someone who didn't know where the cracks were early on. I think this contributed to it for sure. Catches a rebound, shot out of a cannon, runs on a 1-on-4 fast break, beats the 4th guy down the floor, so it's just 1-on-3 by the time he gets inside the 3-point line. Sidesteps into the paint, tries to go up in the rim in a crowd and gets swatted. Then pushes the other way and tries to finish right hand to the left side, gets swatted a couple possessions later, maybe 3 minutes later. Zubac just whacked it off the glass. And then Scoot was a little less aggressive in those type of end-to-end takes. Not that like you want him just to like charge full speed. Like you kind of want him to play basketball, right? Like you want him to play basketball a little bit, but I think the Blazers lost their pace a little bit. Once they were getting whacked, they were not playing fast at all. That's worrisome. That's the not playing with intensity when you're down 30 is worrisome. This team's going to get throttled a bunch this year, right? Like it's like talent is going to catch up with them a lot of times. It's going to be hard to win on the road for this team. The intensity waning in the third quarter when they're getting smoked is troublesome. You want to see them continue to play hard. Why are they getting into offense with 15 on the clock? Like, we know you're down 30, but come on. 81 more of these things. So I think they're missing a tone setter. They're missing a tone setter a little bit. Scoot looked like someone who didn't know where the cracks were in the half court. He didn't look like he had like, okay, I know these 3 things kind of work against this defense. Looked like a guy figuring it out because he's a guy figuring it out. When he finally did score, set a high screen for him. He rejects the screen. So instead of using the Deandre Ayton screen, he rejects the screen quickly, gets himself into the paint, and gets a little push shot off. That's finding the cracks, right? That's you can't live on a series of 11-foot push shots. That's not an NBA arsenal, but figuring out more of where he can score and how he can get his shots off and how he can put pressure on the defense. I think one of the things that was more concerning than the bricks for Scoot was like, I thought he was going to be able to get into the paint and distribute better than he did in this game. And granted, he had 2 passes in the third quarter that were wide open threes. He set Jeremy up for a wide open 3 and Matisse up for a wide open 3, and they missed him. Those are free assists. Those good passes, good move, right idea. And I thought he did a little bit better when he played with Anfernee Simons and Shaedon Sharpe off him, and Sharpe would like lift up into space on a pick and roll, and he quickly hit it over to him, one for a shot that Sharpe made, the only 3 that Sharpe made. Like that type of decision making was fine from Scoot, but the ability to get like what I think is going to be the thing that makes him special in this league is that he will dictate stuff. He will get into the paint, help defenders will come, and then he will be able to dictate, okay, you're going to help from the opposite corner every time. Basically every team in the league has the same principles. Help from the opposite corner. Cash. That's easy. I will make that pass every time down the floor until you guard it differently. And then when you guard it differently, it's a dunk because now you're not helping. Now I'm finding the guy at the dunker spot on the X. But I'm now he's working the baseline. I thought he was going to be able to dictate things a little bit more. This is big time defenders on him. Russell Westbrook is not a lockdown defender, but Kawhi and Robert Covington, who started this game, and Paul George, that's a lot of length. Zubac at the rim is a lot of length. I don't know if the Clippers are going to be one of the elite defensive teams, but that's a good defensive lineup, and they made life hard on Scoot. They made life hard on him. Undeniable. In the grand scheme, game one doesn't mean much for him. There's so much more that I am worried about with this team than the way Scoot looked through 3 quarters. But granted, he didn't look very good. I expect him to be better. I expect him to be able to watch I think it would be nice for him to watch real film of a real NBA game and say, dang, it's harder to score than I thought it would have been. Dang, I didn't see that pass. Or I should have pushed in transition harder here than I did, because if I did, then I get this matchup quickly and I can, do all those things. I think Scoot's on his way. I think he's low on the list. He's low on the list for me. How about some real positives? There's at least one. Anfernee Simons is a good offensive player, and he looked like it. Ant can play. He could score against anyone in this league. Let's talk about Anfernee Simons and where the Blazers can go from here. A little happier to end the episode. First, let's talk about FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. And right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets. All you got to do is put in one $5 bet. Win or lose, you're getting $200. So if you're thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app's super easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options. So when you get those $200 to play with, you can bet on things like spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get into that NFL season. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond. You are still listening to Locked On. Anfernee Simons is good, man. It's good. He can just score. I thought early in the game, very early in the game, first quarter, he's got Paul George on him. Paul George is playing physical, using his long arms, disrupting Anfernee Simons' dribble, and he knocks the ball out of bounds. And I said, that doesn't look good. And basically from that moment forward, Ant kind of figured out how they were going to pressure him on defense and started getting into his shot a lot cleaner. He put Kawhi Leonard on his hip. He ran low mid-range pull-ups to take advantage of an aggressive defense. He manipulated the pick and roll so that it was harder to get to him and easier for him to get into his shots. He pushed in transition and got some easy points. He made 3-pointers. Every time was good in this game. It's good. He finished with 18. I bet he's going to average 22 or whatever, so this is maybe below his average. Didn't shoot super well at the end, finished 6 of 14, but he after what looked like kind of a rocky start for Ant, he got going. He kind of found himself a little bit in the second quarter. He had 12 in that second quarter, kind of keep the Blazers vaguely in the game after their offense had really struggled. And he didn't close the third very strong, but the game was kind of getting away from him. He didn't play a ton in the fourth. He only finished playing 27 minutes, but he can score. He has the pace down. He has a sense of the pace, and I think that matters. In his first shift, he only took 2 shots. I thought he needed to be more aggressive. They were talking about on the broadcast how he is kind of in that Damian Lillard mold where it's like Dame used to feel out the game a little bit in the first quarter and then go get it. That is an interesting notion. I don't buy it. Not that Anfernee Simons can't score a lot of points and can't get his offense with relative ease. He's just not that good of an offensive player, and the team is not good enough for him to feel it out. Previous iterations of the Damian Lillard teams, it's like, yeah, they'll be all right. They'll be okay. Because they had Anfernee Simons and they had CJ McCollum. And unless they're going to play Malcolm Brogdon a whole bunch of minutes, and they're not, because they should and they will and they should play Scoot a whole bunch of minutes. Like that is the correct way to approach this. Ant's got to be more aggressive early. I would rather him, I keep using this phrase, I'd rather Anfernee Simons set the tone, right? I'd rather him score 16 in that first quarter and score 22 in the game. But like, get them going. Make the defense, it's like, one of the issues I think with the Clippers is that they're like, all of their shots are hard. No one out here is getting easy shots. Jeremy Grant's chilling. Matisse Thybulle's not someone who puts pressure on the defense. They had no idea what to do with Deandre Ayton on offense. Scoot Henderson's 19 years old. I think it would have behooved Ant to be aggressive early in that first quarter. Go set the tone. Mostly when I'm talking about tone, I'm talking about emotional tone. It's kind of that sort of the setting the vibe. But for Ant, it's like really like go score early on this team, on this way. Like you're not, with all due respect, he's not Dame. Like he's just not going to, he can't get an easy 30 if he like really puts his mind to it in the final three quarters. He's a very good offensive player and he could probably get a difficult 30 in the final three quarters if he wanted it. He can really shoot off the dribble, and he's got good touch. But I wanted him to be more aggressive early. When he was aggressive in the second quarter, that was the best they looked all game long. He's going to have to put his stamp on this thing. And he's going to have to put his stamp on this thing in a way that maybe doesn't always suit him. Like Anfernee Simons looks for his shot. Don't get it twisted. I'm not trying to say that he's like not aggressive. What I am suggesting here is that Anfernee Simons should be hyper aggressive until Scoot's figuring out how to also be that level of aggressive. Because Ant can score. He can score on anybody. Like I am not worried about him. He can score on anybody. So more of it. Turn up the dial. Figure out what's going on with Jeremy Grant and turn his dial up to like 300%. And get him going. And like we've seen last year, there were games when Simons and Grant were great together as a duo. They got to get that rhythm a little bit on offense. I would say, generally speaking, I think the Blazers are going to be, I think the starting lineup is going to have some trouble scoring in the half court. Deandre Ayton doesn't shoot. Matisse Thybulle can shoot, but he does not have a track record of being a good shooter, and defenses do not treat him like a shooter. So he's going to have to shoot his way into that reputation. That could take 40 games. But they don't guard him like one. And that changes the geometry. And they certainly don't guard Scoot like a shooter. And having three kind of iffy shooters makes the half-court offense, it might make it a little bit of a struggle. And I think that's why Ant being aggressive right away, saying, listen, you think you can, it's easy to guard this group. Well, you can't guard me. And getting Jeremy Grant going and getting him good looks, he missed all his threes. And so like some of it's just like, when you get a wide open shot from the corner, make it, Jeremy. That would probably be a good start. But like getting your two best offensive players going early can kind of grease the wheels. And then if teams have to respond and say, okay, we got to get the ball out of Anfernee Simons' hands, and they send two to the ball, great. Then the whole floor is going to open up. But you're not going to command double teams right out by taking two shots in your first 7-minute shift. You got to be more, Ant's got to be more aggressive. That's one thing. I think the half-court offense is going to be a struggle, and I think Anfernee Simons has to put his fingerprints on things, put his stamp on things early, because he's the guy who can kind of unlock, he's the guy who can make teams change their scheme. And that's the whole goal of NBA defenses, right? Or NBA offenses is like, come in there, find their scheme, and break it. Once you break their scheme, they're reacting to you, and then you can go from there. And Ant is the guy right now, games 1 and 2, who's someone who can break the scheme. Jeremy can do that to some extent, but he's not as good. He's not a great playmaker. His handle was broken tonight. And he's an ISO scorer. That's and a spot up shooter. Like he can do those things at a high level, but he's not breaking defenses in the way and how he does things. Defense, I don't have a great solution. some of it is simple communication. Get rid of the mess, like where you just don't communicate on a pick and roll and you give up a practice level jump shot, where you don't locate at all coming back in like semi transition. So Kawhi Leonard gets an open jump shot, but you realized a little bit late that you weren't guarding him, so you run out there and then you give up a wide open rebound to Ivica Zubac. I'm not sure this team can put out competent offensive teams that can rebound. I think defensive rebounding is going to be a challenge for them all year long. Their path to being competitive most nights is getting the offense going, playing a little bit fast, and running at every opportunity they get. I'm having trouble seeing, short of just like not playing the young guys, putting out competent defensive lineups for long stretches. Of note, Tamati Kamara was the 9th man off the bench tonight. He seems to have leapfrogged Jabari Walker. Tamati didn't look that good. Jabari played at the very end of the first half when they went 10 deep, but it is because the Clippers did not have a center on the court, and so Chauncey Billups went centerless as well and got Rob Williams out of there just for the final 2.5 minutes of the first half, and they were already down 20. But Kamara's got some defensive versatility. I don't think he's going to be an answer right away, but he can be. I think with Matisse and Rob Williams and Jeremy Grant, you can put out some decent defensive groups, and then in those lineups, you gotta be smart on how you attack, because Rob and Matisse is two non-shooters. The half-court offense is going to be a challenge. The balance is going to be tough for them all season, and I think finding that balance, and particularly finding that balance by leaning into your strengths, let Anfernee Simons get going early, is the path to find about that balance early. I don't think the Blazers are going to be, like I said, like I think they're going to win 28 games or whatever. Like I don't think they're going to be good, but they can be better than they were in game one, because they can just play with a little more purpose and a little more oomph. Kind of just like sort of basic energy stuff, and be smarter about how you attack early in the game. And I think they'll be in better shape. And I just think Scoot's going to play better. I think Scoot's going to get better as they keep going. And I think Shaedon Sharpe's going to make 3-pointers again at one point, and that's going to help too. I think they're capable of being competitive pretty much every night. But tonight was a reminder of how thin their margin for error is. Like if they're just not there, that scale is going to tip fast. And they're not good enough to get back. So they can't give away easy stuff with crappy transition defense and an offense that spends 9 to 14 minutes trying to figure out who's our best offensive player. Know that before the game starts. Run stuff through him early to set the tone, and then work from there. That's my advice. Guess what? More games coming. Yeah. 81 left. Friday show, we'll preview the Magic game and clear the notebook, talking about what else we learned from this one. I'll be in the building for the Magic game, and the Blazers are going to head out for 3 on the road. So guess what? We'll do 5 a week everywhere you get podcasts, also on YouTube. Tell your friends about the program. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.